All right, and here we go. So you are here for Relationship Comes First, Part 2, Strengthening Grantor and Grantee Partnerships. Um, we have noticed as BRJA lately how many amazing organizational friends we have. And we realize there's some great conversations that we need to be having and inviting other people to, rather than just having them in our own spaces. And this is one of them. We have noticed that the three people who are on with us today were particularly good at and seemed particularly interested in partnership building, relationship building. And so rather than transactional relationships, and in this case, we're talking about grantor grantee relationships, instead of it's like, give me the money. And then on the other side, it's here's your money. And that's it. We started getting really curious about what different kinds of relationship could be like. And we think that we are building those with the three people today. And so, yeah, we wanted to dig into that. This is not going to be a technical session. It's not going to be a how to write a grant session. It's not going to be a would you fund X, Y, or Z session. There's certainly places for that, but that's not going to be this conversation. So we encourage when you participate to keep it to this broader question of relationships. We'll also be touching on power, because obviously having money organizationally and asking for money organizationally are two very different things. So that'll be part of the conversation as well. Okay, I think that's enough introductory stuff from BRJA. I would like to invite our panelists. Wait, Adar, would you introduce yourself, Adar? I'm sorry, I forgot. Very important.
Forgot I was muted. Hello, everybody. I'm Adara Ayera. I'm so glad to be here with these three really amazing partners. And I'm so glad for you that you are joining us to so that you can see the awesomeness that is them and the way in which they do work. So we are all winning for 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon. I am a staff member of BRJA and also one of the co-founders of the organization.
Yay, thank you, Adar. All right, and I'm going to go in the order on my screen and ask Gary if you would go first and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Gary Williams. I am program officer at France-Merrick, and have been in this role about 4 years. So still feel pretty new to philanthropy and how it works, but definitely glad to be here.
Thank you, Gary. Then going down my screen, I see Kerry. Kerry, can you say a few words?
Yeah, thanks so much, Dana and Adar. I'm super excited to be here with you all today. I'm Kerry McHugh. I'm the program officer for the Helen J. Serini Foundation, which is a small family foundation named after my grandmother. And I also do work in, for lack of a better term, philanthropic organizing, talking to funders about philanthropic practice and what that looks like. So I have 2 little kids, and unlike everybody else in this call, I am actually based in Frederick, not in Baltimore. So I am zooming into you from outside of your region, but we fund in Baltimore. So thrilled to be here.
Nice. Thank you, Kerry. Sara, last but not least.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sara Cooper. I'm the Director of Employment Education and Training at the Annie E. Casey Foundation. Been at the foundation for over 8 years. I recently had a role change. Prior, I was a Senior Associate for Economic Opportunity within our Baltimore Civic site. Our headquarters are in Baltimore, but we are a national funder. But because our headquarters were in Baltimore, we do deep Baltimore grant making. So it's a pleasure to be with you all and really excited about this conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you, Sara. All right. So now, participants, you've heard a little bit more about us who's on the screen today. If you could come into the chat and say just a couple things, and they're going to come up here. We know your name. It's on the Zoom. we would like to identify ourselves racially in terms of socio-political racial identification. And when we ask that, it is in terms of, say, I'm white. If I'm walking down the street and you see me, you would say, oh, yes, there was a white woman who walked by, if you happen to be noting that. I may have other identities ethnically, for example, personally that are important to me, but we also notice what our socio-political racial identification is. So we ask you to note that in the chat. Organization or sector that you work in, that can be as broad as you need it to be. And then as you enter the room today, what's on your mind about this topic? If you registered, you may have put a couple words in the registration, and you could repeat those same things right here if you wanted, just so everybody's on the same page about how we're coming in today. And so I'm going to invite each person to put that in the chat now. I'm going to model. Okay, thank you, Franny. Franny, what are you, can you also put in the chat what you're coming into the room thinking about? And maybe you already are, and I'm jumping on it, but all right. I'm putting mine in the chat. Dana, white, working nonprofit, and I'm thinking about not just what's easy, but also what's difficult. Oh, great question, Shakira. Thank you. Glory, unsure. Okay. Okay, thanks, Scott. Yeah, this question of funder entrepreneur power dynamics, certainly a relationship building issue. I think, oh, yeah, Chloe, if you can come back on camera or let us know when you'll be able to do that, that'd be helpful. Oh, thank you so much. Has anybody not responded in the chat?
I am not sure I responded. My message is sitting here and my computer seems to want to go wacky.
Okay, Cynthia, what's on your mind as you come in today?
Just about how you start and when you start the relationship building.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
so that's basically it. And I don't know what's going on here, but sorry about that.
No, all good. Good to hear your voice in the space. All right, cool. This is very helpful. I say let's go ahead and move into our conversation. I think the conversation we have planned is really going to touch on what I've seen in the chat, but as we get towards the end, if it does not, we do encourage you to pop back in the chat and say, hey, wait a minute, I wanted to, hoping to hear about such and such. So yeah, we wanted to take it pretty basic to start off the conversation and just ask our panelists, is relationship building with grantees a priority for you? Just keep it even basic. It's why are we here? Like, is this thing important? And if so, how and why? And I will open it to any of our panelists to start.
I'll start first. So for me, it's definitely important. at France-Merrick, we are project-based capital funders. So our relationship with grantees looks a little different. We come in at a specific time for a specific moment in the organization's kind of life cycle,
Mhm.
fund something. It's not as if we're operating and we're here every year, you're receiving money, you're reporting back to us whenever or whatnot. And so in some ways the relationship looks different. And so oftentimes it's with me, it's really important. So it's doing coffee, it's seeing folks at events, inviting them to things, sharing other resources with them, um, because and just really thinking about how it's going with the specific leader, and then how's the health and well-being of the organization as a whole. And for me, both of those things matter. And in some ways, you can't care about one without the other.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Gary.
Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think 100%. It is so critical. I think when I entered into philanthropy over 8 years ago, it being a new space. However, I did come from a state agency, so technically was like a public funder, but philanthropy is much different. And I've spent a lot of time juxtaposing that difference. Um, and honestly, like, I mean, relationships matter in both spaces, but I think philanthropic dollars is, from my vantage point, meant to be a way for organizations to um, grow, to innovate, to be creative, to fill gaps, to fulfill their missions. And in order to do that, um, the relationship building is so critical. I think a skill that I've uh, really worked on in being in philanthropy and continue to is like listening. Just listen. Also show up. I think showing up, doing what you're going to say you're going to do, um, and that it also, I think, takes a lot of time. And I was just looking at your kind of your title slide. Uh, what was it? Grantor, grantee, like the partnerships piece of that. And you talked about power, or the power dynamic, like this funder grantee power dynamic, even using those words.
Mhm.
So it's more about like partnership, and like even shifting language around that, and trust building around being partners, even helps with kind of shifting those power dynamics.
Mhm. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, that leaves me. So, similar to Gary and Sarah, I'm a little bit different, but also lots of funders are a little bit different, right? Which is both part of the problem and maybe part of the solution, depending on how we frame it. But I came to philanthropy about 12 years ago, having worked in communications for nonprofit and government agencies. So I'd worked with nonprofits, but not on a fundraising side. And I will say, so we're again, small family foundation. When I say small, I mean small in all the ways, right? I am one of two part-time staff people. That's it. We don't give big grants, and we don't have a huge grants budget. And so we were really trying to think about ways that we could. I've started to really hesitate around the word impact, but I don't have a better one at the moment, so I'm going to say impact. Like, how could we have an impact with our small dollar size and our small overall grants budget. And really that sort of drilled into, that's what led us into relationships, right? So the reason we're a place-based funder is so that we could spend that time, energy, effort, resources on being in relationship with nonprofits that we wanted to sort of learn more about and get to know and perhaps ultimately fund. Um, I will also say, because I came into philanthropy the way that I did, um, I, I made a lot of mistakes. Let's put it that way. Like the first couple of years that I was in a funder role, I made a lot of mistakes. And I didn't fully understand or appreciate the context of that power dynamic, Sarah and Gary, that you both lifted, um, or why nonprofits wouldn't automatically trust us as funders, frankly. It's not that I sort of expected, I was like, oh, well, I'm trustworthy. It wasn't so much that, it was that I wasn't used to coming into a context where trust was not sort of the starting point. And I'm a privileged white lady. So when I walk into a space, I was just not aware. I hadn't done my homework and I wasn't fully aware of all the dynamics at play. So I feel like a lot of my work in philanthropy since then has been around recentering on relationship, which to Sarah's point is a lot of listening, a lot of learning, a lot of unlearning, and really taking the time to slow down and get to know people, with the belief that people make up organizations and organizations make up systems. And so if we're going to get to systems change, I know Franny, you had a question about systems change, right? Like I hold that it starts with people. And so relationships are, I think, the most important part of what I do, more so than funding, even though funding is obviously a piece of that work. I'll stop there for now.
Wow. All right. Y'all said a lot. So first I want to invite Adar to comment if she's connecting any threads, and then hear from you all if you have responses. Yeah. Oh, Adar, you're muted. Yeah.
Sorry, the thing that really resonates for me, number one, is the fact that you all are so self-aware of the space. I mean, of the philanthropy space and the power difference of that space. Your position, the people and organizations that are being funded by you, and having worked with foundations for more years than I care to name, I can definitely say that that's one of the things that really stands out for me, just the awareness. Just the awareness that you all are walking into any room representing an institution that has a history, with some of that history being positive and some of that history being negative. And you're being respectful of how people might perceive those histories in the different spaces in which you occupy. And so when you all are talking about trust, especially you, Kerry, and your journey to recognizing that, again, the fact that you all got there instead of staying in the hype of, well, I'm working with this foundation, and so I can walk in any space and have people drop the mic because I'm there, because I'm representing this organization. A lot of people do that, and that's not a value judgment. It's not a critique. It just is a statement of fact. So the fact that you don't, and then when you all talk about listening, and Gary, when you're talking about the importance of going for coffee, Sara, when you talk about just the essential component of listening to what people are saying, again, it is that duality of understanding the history of where you sit as agents of philanthropy, and also understanding that people are people that need to be attended to, that need to be known, so that you all can better do your jobs. What is missing from this conversation for me, which is a wonderful thing, is your viewing this as a transactional relationship. And you are really talking about developing authentic relationships, right? That sustain.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little more about that? I mean, and Gary, I'm really looking at you because of the three, you are the one who may not be interacting with grantors year to year.
Right.
How do you keep that connection or revitalize it every time the organization comes back to you for a
Yeah.
grant?
So I think it depends, right? So I go at the speed of the grantee. So like
Mhm.
some grantees are like, cut me my check and I'll see you in 2 years.
Mhm.
And that is perfectly fine.
Mhm.
And I understand why people might feel like that about us, right? Like, give me my money, let me go do my work, and I'll send you your report. And like, we don't need to kiki and have coffee or tea or whatever. And that is okay, right? Like, part of, being an honest broker is like dealing with people as they want to deal with you,
Mhm.
right? Um, and because I came into philanthropy with sharp critiques of philanthropy through my experience, um, I understand why people feel that way, right?
Mhm.
Like, and so it made sense. But I mean, in other cases, right, it is much more. I think I'm very hyper aware about the lack of relationship because of the lack of touch points. Because for many of our grants, there's a midway report and an end of year report or end of project report, I should say. And then but we don't have a culture of because we don't, I think you have to balance how to not be a burden to grantees of like, is this person clocking me so hard? Do they think I'm not doing my job well? I think I'm wasting the money versus like also let people know like I'm actually here to be a support system. Like, yes, we gave you this money, but there are other resources I have at hand, right? Some of that is my relationship with other funders to say, hey, Sarah, like I heard about this project. It might be a fit. Would you be interested in meeting with them? Some of that might be some other technical assistance things. Hey, there's this cohort around XYZ issue, and I think you might be great for it, and you and your organization should participate, right? And so for me, those opportunities to share that knowledge really helps. The other thing is because of like I live in the city and where I live in the city, like people see me. Like you can catch me at the grocery store, you can catch me at a community event. Like folks are always like, I didn't think you would be at XYZ place. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm Baltimore through and through. I've been here forever, all my life. And they'll be like, "Wow, I didn't know you would go to this kind of restaurant," because they have ideas of who's in philanthropy. Like, let's be transparent as a black man in philanthropy, right? Like, my kids go to public school. I live in Northeast Baltimore in a very black neighborhood. And so, like, you will catch me in places that you might not see my peers because we live very different lives, right? So, like, some folks, the relationship started because we talked for 20 minutes in Aldi next to the fruit, right? And so, and they're like, oh, you personally feel approachable. Therefore, professionally, I feel like I can talk to you about this thing because I've seen you in a context that is much more community based. That is, you might catch me at the block party, you might catch me at Melba's, you might catch me somewhere else, right? So, like, all of those things. And people are always glad to, once they see me in those other spaces, sometimes that also helps people say, oh, Gary's a human, he's a person, he's reachable, he's warm, he's friendly, and I can talk to him about XYZ and be willing to continually to engage. And also I recognize I got to bring something to the table. So I got to bring money, I got to bring some other resources, I got to bring some knowledge, and that is a-okay because that is my role as a grant maker, right? Like I don't shy away. Like I don't waste people's time. Like so I'm either setting you up to get some money somewhere else or some knowledge that will help you further your mission. And if I'm not doing one of those two things, then I'm not really being a help. And that's not just being transactional, but that's also understanding as a gatekeeper in this organization, right? And as a person who cares about my community deeply and represents both of those in some ways, right? In which that can be intention in a lot of ways. The way for me to leverage this position, right, is to make sure that every time we meet, I'm coming to the table with something that helps you.
Mm. See, and this is okay. Now, I want to can we just do kitchen table talk? Let's just,
Yeah.
because I'm getting ready to get in it. Dana, can I just jump
Oh,
in
go,
and get?
go.
So here's the thing that, Gary, so you shared, okay, I'm around town. People are going to see me shopping where they shop. You are a Black man in Baltimore. And so Black people are going to see you in Black spaces. And this doesn't mean that you're not in other white people's spaces too, or professional spaces too, but it does mean that there is a particular context, an added context that you're bringing to the table. So when people see you in their spaces, I believe that it is probably easier to establish trust because y'all are you know, at the seafood counter waiting for your orders, right? In those spaces. I think that it is different, maybe with you, Sara, with you, Kerry, because you all may not be organically in those spaces because of where you live or because of the circles in which you travel, right? And as a Black person who's lived in Baltimore for almost 30 years and who has seen how white-led foundations operate and how they move. If I am a Black person in an organization going for a grant, dealing with Casey or dealing with Serini Foundation for the first time, I'm not seeing you maybe in the stores where I see Gary. I am coming to you without context of who you are or how you are. I don't know whether you are the standoffish program officer or whether you are the program officer that I can trust, right? And I don't even know how to begin to develop relationship with you. Do I need to stay in my very professional role in approaching you, or can I approach you not only in my professional role, but as a human being? And speaking from my experience with you all convey, you all put on the table, listen, we are white women doing this work, and we understand the history and the baggage of that, but we are also Kerry and Sara, and we are here to partner to do the work. And so I want to just ask you specifically, how do you like feel comfortable, free, the necessity of putting that kitchen table talk on the table, understanding that there may be a possibility of it backfiring, there may be a possibility of people not receiving it in the spirit that it is intended. How do you negotiate that? And Gary, same thing for you, being one of the few Black people in a white philanthropic space for the most part. How do you balance that too? So, Sara, Kerry, Gary.
Adar, wow, yeah, that's a lot. And the first time I heard, like, Adar taught me the like kitchen table. Let's like, you know, clear away and let's talk kitchen table. So I think Kerry brought up some really good points earlier. Is and similarly, like, I have made lots of missteps and made a lot of mistakes, put my foot in my mouth, didn't say what I should have said, all the things, right? And so I just spent a lot of time, and actually Adar being one of those people that I partnered with frequently around learning, just listening, understanding, and getting like comfortable in my own skin, my own whiteness, and my own role, and understanding it, and then putting myself in places and spaces so I can learn and start to be in community and understand, you know, how to move, how to be in spaces that I'm not used to, so that I can be the best grant maker, and the best program officer, and be responsive. And that was to my earlier point too, like, of doing what I say I'm going to do, being responsive. When someone asks to, you know, like, Gary, go have coffee or go grab lunch, like, do that and be in community with other folks, and acknowledge who I am and who I'm not, I think is also really important.
Thank you. And I want to say, and Sara, you mentioned our journey together. And one of the reasons, right, I think that our relationship developed was because of your openness, and because of even the time when you were questioning your willingness to just be vulnerable about it and put out there where you are. And that allowed me to unmask, knowing that, I mean, because I came with a reputation right, in terms of the work that I do. So that allowed me to unmask and to say, okay, here is a person who is really being transparent about this. And so I think that through the years, we learn to trust and also to invest in each other. And that has been, in my experience, is very rare when you're talking about a funder grantee relationship, that we can operate just as people who really value and appreciate and like each other and are friends, and understand the roles that we are in and be respectful of both those things. And that never would have happened if neither of us had taken a chance and made the leap, right? So in terms of like how you know to build trust, or how you even start to build trust, there has to be a certain level of vulnerability that both parties are able to give right at the jump. Carrie, what about you? What are your thoughts?
I have so many. Adar, I love this question and this. Yes. And Sarah, Adar was the one who introduced me to kitchen table talks as well, right? So kitchen table talks, gather around. I went to calling it a training feels like doing it a disservice, but there's a funder called Thousand Currents, and they run what they call Thousand Currents Academy. It's sort of like a leadership retreat. So I had the opportunity to participate in that about 8 years ago, and they had a resident artist there. That Black Merman lady was her name, and she said the most simple but most profound thing, which is wherever you go, there you are.
Mhm.
And it's so obvious. And also, I needed that guy. You know how you just have to be in the right space at the right time with the right people? Like, there was something about that moment and that experience that like really unlocked for something for me. And that was when, I mean, even in my intro today, I said, I'm the program officer for the Helen J. Serini Foundation. I don't have the same last name as the Serini Foundation, but I lead with the fact that I am related to the person that the foundation is named after. My grandmother did not start it, but it's named after her. Um, because I think that's a really important piece of who I am and how I show up. And I often, Adar, you said, like, how do you open the conversation? How do you start? I think some of it can be energy and sort of how you show up in a space. But I also think it's really powerful to name certain things, to not dance around the things that can make us, particularly as white women, uncomfortable, to not pretend that they're not true, or to pretend that like they're true about other people but they're not true about me, right? Like that might be the case, but if you don't know me, you don't know that, right? Like I come across as any other white woman working in philanthropy, and in my case working in family philanthropy, and there's a lot of stuff to navigate in that. So I think really, I try, and again, I make mistakes, I get it wrong, I've tripped up many a time. But I try to step into conversation being really clear about who I am, the role that I have, the role that I play, the role that I see a foundation playing, which I think in our case is a little bit different than the traditional transactional power down kind of funder fundee relationship. And then I think, as I listen to all of the comments here, Gary, Adar, Sarah, I just keep coming back to this thread of time. We talk a lot about having an abundance mindset, and I think in philanthropy that can get a little bit wonky, right? Because we're dealing with like sums of money that are truly unfathomable sometimes. But time is a resource as well, and it's one that I think I'll speak for myself. I won't say we, I will say can be really easy to fall into thinking about a scarcity of time, right? Like I have two small children, I have two part-time jobs, I do some freelance work, I do volunteer work, I'm engaged in my local church community, right? Like I have all the things that I'm engaged in. What's not abundant on my calendar is like lots of unblocked time. But relationship takes time. You can't just, it's not like, oh, we'll just have a 5-minute phone call and now I'll know everything about you and you'll know everything about me. And now we can just like move on to the meaty stuff. It's showing up time and time again. It's like, it's making the space, it's taking the space, it's stepping back and letting other people take the space. And also it's sort of like the long arc, right? Like I think about the first conversation that we had with BRJA, and it wasn't a kitchen table conversation. It wouldn't have been. You didn't know me. So we had one conversation, and then we had another conversation, and then we had another conversation, right? And so it's like it's the time on the daily, but it's also the time in this like there are situations where it might take a couple years, and I don't know that there are lots of situations that are very, very urgent. And so I don't mean to say we can sit around and twiddle our thumbs and like wait 2 years until we trust each other to like do anything about the fact that communities are being very, very seriously harmed in the immediate moment. And also, if we don't take the time to slow down, we're just going to keep replicating the harms in new and creative ways because we're not starting from a place of relationship and trust. So that's how I feel about it. That's how I try to step into spaces.
This is yeah, can I say y'all are blowing my mind right now with it. You know how when you slow down a soundtrack and it goes, I feel like that's what's happening in my mind right now. And it started with Gary, you said, no, somebody said something about relationship building is more important than giving the money. I don't know if that was Gary or Sara. And then whoever didn't say that also said, so like Gary, you said something kind of akin to that. And then what Carrie just, it's just like, I think I came into this session as a full proponent of this partnership thing, but not fully understanding the what we're talking about until right now. So
Yeah.
like I feel like this really changed.
Yeah.
Like if the pace does need to slow down, Carrie, you're right. Because if we're just always like throwing money or throwing meetings or throwing whatever, we're not changing things. So what does it mean to get to that level of changing? I think
Can
Gary,
I Can I
yeah.
say two things? First of all, I want to just ask everybody that what is your largest obstacle? So for Shakira, for Franny, for Scott, for everyone, what's your biggest obstacle in beginning the development, the relationship development with your philanthropic partners? I think that it would be helpful to know. And then Gary and Kerry and Sara, if you can keep an eye out on the chat, and if you have suggestions or advice to kind of dismantle those obstacles, that is something that I would want invite you to share. And the other thing that the three of you brought up, which, oh my gosh, is so essential, and I also feel like I'm hearing it in a different way for the first time, is the difference between people being in philanthropy because it is about their job and their career, and people being in philanthropy because this is the vehicle through which they effect and impact change.
Yeah.
And the three of you have talked about this and the way in which you approach it as the vehicle, the space where you can use your skills and professional talents to actually impact change in Baltimore City. I mean, how essential is that to what you all are bringing to the table? Because that's a completely different mindset driver in terms of working to develop real relationships and partnerships with your grantees who are doing the same thing, as opposed to this just being your job and you just handing out money, and it's not even about really impacting
Yeah.
change for the residents of Baltimore. Gary, what do
Yeah.
you think?
So I think for me, it's, like I can't, like I didn't start my career in the nonprofit sector thinking I would end up in philanthropy. And even when I applied for this job, to be honest, I didn't think I was going to get this job, right? Like I had all in my brain, like all the reasons why I didn't think they would choose me for this role. And it was on a whim during COVID. And then the interview kept coming, coming, coming. And then all of a sudden the offer came. And I was like, I think I got to actually take seriously that they want me now. So like, because I just didn't think I fit like I didn't see myself in philanthropy, right? Like I was, when in full transparency, there are other black men who come off much more professional as I do. The white men come much more professional than I do. There's way more white women than ever before, and I didn't see myself in them. And then I'm often in full transparency in spaces where like we live in these almost different universes here in the city, right? So like I didn't come to this job being like I didn't come thinking that, right? Like I just didn't. For me it was like you said, it was an opportunity to say like I think I can do some things and really be helpful to my city and my community. And here's an opportunity to do that at a scale that I couldn't do maybe before, and to facilitate resources towards community in a way that I couldn't do before. And so I definitely, when I started at 21, being like, yeah, I'm gonna go into the nonprofit sector, I did not ever think I would be in philanthropy. And so I think that definitely colors the way I work in that. And then I think for me, right, I know Shakira asked a question, right, that was really about that may not feel welcome. Like I have had several people, a lot of grantees who said I would not have applied to the France-Merrick Foundation if it wasn't for my engagement with them. That like I allow them to say like, all right. And some of them have blatantly said like, I don't really trust those white folks, but I trust you. And I feel like that's a lot of weight to carry. It's like I don't want to carry water for anyone else but myself. And, you know, and nonetheless, like you know, and I'm building a relationship with folks at the foundation as I'm a new person, right? So like it was hard to hear that, especially the first year where I'm like, I'm just learning my coworkers and board members and da 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 da, and I'm carrying this weight because of the skin that I inhabit and the culture that I'm in. And so that to carry that, and then also some people have said like I had previous bad relationships with the foundation and I don't want to talk to them, but I'll talk to you.
Mhm.
And I'm like, so if this goes left, like you might miss out on these resources if I don't do this the proper way. And that's heavy. That is a burden to carry in a way. And so sometimes I'm like, oh wow, like that is often my immediate, it's like, don't put that on me. But in some ways, like it's put on me because I sit in the chair that I sit in. And then because when people can see me around and out about, and they're like, oh, then it's really even more. Like, for example, I do education work, but I'm also a parent with kids in city schools, and I'm on my kids' PTO. So, like, the school system isn't an abstraction, right? Like, it is a system I'm invested in because they have my babies, 6 to 8 hours a day you know, and
Mhm.
my nieces and nephews are all city school students. And so like I'm invested in this work in a way because like I have some skin in the game, right? Like and I got to show up and then when things don't go right, yes, it's great you can find me at the grocery store, you can find me out at the bar when you go see me on my nightlife, but it's also hard when you can find me that easily. Right? Because when
Yeah,
things go
right.
left,
Exactly. You
you know,
visible. You
right?
you are visible. You know that
I've definitely been engaged in a way when it's been like I didn't get my money, and I'm like,
and again this thing about relationship but also how you are placed, and I want to go back to Shakira's comment because I too remember in Baltimore foundations, and this was like where I stepped in because the work that I was doing at the time was basically as a bridge between those grassroots organizations that foundations would not look at because they were run by Black people or by immigrants. And because they did not speak the foundation language, if you will, and foundations coming from this and using this white middle income eh, metrics could not look at them and see the ways in which they were doing good work, right? And again, for me, this gets back to Sara and Kerry's um, um, listening, and not only that, but being willing to translate and advocate for those groups that maybe your peers would not necessarily advocate for or be able to see the fullness of the impact that they were having because of the lens through which they were looking. Gary, I know that you go and that you like advocate for groups. You take the
yeah,
receipts and the facts and you go in there and you do that. Carrie and Sara, you all do the same thing, right? I also know that there's a difference in risk that you all take to do so. Gary, you being Black in a majority white space, Sara and Kerry, you all being women in a majority white male space, right? You're white women, so you have white privilege, but gender-wise, you don't. So how do each of you negotiate the risk that you are taking through advocating for groups that foundations might not traditionally consider? And where do you feel that your responsibility is in doing that?
I'm trying to think of the best way to answer that. I think what comes to mind for me is in a um we're a 200-person organization, national funder. Um, I think it's a bit of a tension in terms of like, we are being asked to be good stewards of the dollars that we're responsible for. We have priorities, we have strategies, right? And also we care deeply about, and we're not, bashful about it. We care about um, equity and inclusion, and the ways in which we operate is like from a data perspective, and in a majority Black city like Baltimore, um, being able to navigate. We can't necessarily do that all over the country, but depending on environments, but this is the reality in communities, and building relationships with organizations that are doing that good work is ways in which we manage that, I guess, tension within our parameters, so to speak. I hope I'm making sense. And that the foundation cares deeply about changing systems, and that takes time. And in order to do that, you have to build the relationships and build out strategies that are just going to take time. And yeah, I think, and I think another something that I have learned is when I'm in relationship with partners, and they're able to, I know that I've built trust when partners come to me and say, this isn't going well, whatever it is, and that we can have real dialogue about it. We can problem solve it, because there are certainly perhaps relationships where that's not a thing. I'm not going to go to my funder with that issue. I can't, because of the perceived, real or not, power dynamics. And this work can take a long time, and it can be really challenging and messy. And so that is so important for all the reasons.
Thank you. Kerry?
Yeah, I love this question because I think one of the things I've done, again, situated in a very differently sized foundation, right? So, Sara, you're working inside an organization with 200 staff people. I control all of our grant making systems, right? I mean, I don't make the final funding decisions, but no one is paying attention to whether or not I change a question on a grant application or if I change the whole process. So I really think about it as like, where do I have control? Where do I have influence? And how can I leverage that in support of organizations that might not be served by sort of the quote unquote philanthropic best practices, which I very much put in quotation marks because there's a lot of them that folks in philanthropy are taught or that are handed down, or there's all kinds of workshops about like how to make a better grant application, but they're all how to make it better for a funder. They're not how to make it better for community organizations. And so, I mean, Dana and Adar and Rebecca, like again, fully owning that we don't always get it right. We try to keep things really invitational and really informal. So our even from an application standpoint, it's highly narrative, and there's not a lot of like, oh, translate this into this Apple, like we don't have a budget template, and like I don't need to have 10 years of your board's giving in order to, right? Like, I'm like, I want to know what you do and who you are and why you're passionate about the work that you're doing and where you're finding joy and where there might be some things that are getting in the way. And then we can think about whether or not there's a role for us to play as a funder that can help support that joy and that passion and maybe remove some of those uh barriers or inhibitors. But similarly, like we don't do written reports. I mean, you folks can send me a written report if they want to. They're welcome to. It's an invitation. But if you don't want to write a report, let's have coffee. And if you are really too busy because it's the end of your fiscal year and you don't have time to have coffee right now and you don't want to write a report, send me something you wrote for someone else. And if you don't even have time for that, okay, great. I'll talk to you in a couple months when you can breathe again because your work is important, right? And your work is not more important than my work. And so then I mean, yes, there is risk, but it's not a huge risk for me given how I'm situated within the family and within the organization. I will go back into a board meeting with an update, and the update will be things are really cranking. And so I haven't had a chance to touch base with this group. And that's right. That's not putting blame on a group. That's not putting blame on a grantee or an organization. It's just the reality. And there are times where that might, I'm like, oh, if it's been 2 years since we've chatted or had any form of communication, like, okay, those are red flags or maybe I don't know, yellow flags. But again, it's like, how do we look at it in the long arc and sort of invite folks in different ways that are not driven by it has to be this perfectly grammatically structured on beautiful letterhead with fancy budget numbers and a really fancy expensive audit in order for us to even consider entering the conversation. Like, I'll have a conversation with anybody. And Gary, to your point, I try not to waste people's time. Like, I'll always have the conversation, and sometimes the conversation is like, we won't fund that.
But you never leave it there. We won't fund you, but let's talk more about how we can help, what
Right.
resources we can give. And the three of you are so generous about doing that. And it reminds me again that, this is the difference between a transactional relationship, which is just about money, and the we are in partnership to help transform Baltimore, which means that it's not just about the check, it is also about your commitment to the project and the project's commitment to doing the best work that they can for Baltimore. And that may include involving you all as thought partners, not just as check givers, but I'm in trouble. We haven't been able to negotiate this. We're having a problem with this right here. Can we talk to you and pick your brain a little bit? And the value that you three give in doing that, and that the foundation gives in doing that, is worth just as much as, or if not more, than the check that they write. And that's a part of this philanthropic relationship that gets short shrift, that I think that people don't realize the potential for that. So Gary, last words on this, and then if you give us a final thought, and then Kerry and Sara will circle back to you for a final thought. Go to Dana.
So for me, I think relationship, like how I navigate this, is sometimes it's me bringing a colleague with me, because I might not be the right voice to advocate for something, right? And my voice could be wearing on people. And so sometimes it's, let me bring, one of my colleagues to come, to an event that this group is holding to see what they're doing. Sometimes, the other thing I'd also do, so that then they can be the one to advocate, on behalf, and I can give them some talking points to share or whatever. And then also I also root it in the sense of, like, we have a vision and a mission, and we have these kind of program areas we work in, and I really kind of hammer home, like, if they fit into that, like, we should really be engaging with them, and rooted in kind of like, if these are the things we're trying to accomplish, and here's how that group tries to accomplish those, and we should, fund them in that. And sometimes it's, this specific project doesn't work, but this other thing, because we've had a conversation, actually is a better fit for us. Like, let's talk about that thing. You know, um, that is where we, that is actually better. Like there are times when I'm like, share 5 things and let me tell you which one is the best fit for us. And then I can also tell you who else you should go to for these other 4. And, and on all of that. I think one last thing, to really try to wrap this up for me is really like the relationship is about the work, right? Like the relationship serves a purpose. And so the relationship is both of us having this mission around wanting to see Baltimore be a better city, right? To and I always root that in. We share a vision, and we have similar goals and we just play different roles in that work. And so for me, the relationship then is like, how am I helping facilitate that? And oftentimes I often ask my grantees for advice on certain things also, not on maybe other grantees, but like, hey, like this thing has come up and I don't really know much about it. And could you inform me about this? What's going on? I have grantees when I see things come out of the state legislature to understand like, how does this affect education? How does this affect housing? That I go and ask, like, could you really explain this bill? I don't know. Or like there might be other issues. It's like you have a deeper expertise, and I would love to get like that equivalent knowledge sharing. But again, like I said, the relationship is rooted in our both of our desire for the city, right? And our love of Baltimore and its people. And even no matter how up and down relationships go, because that's the nature of relationships, like that is our, with that being our North Star,
Right.
we can figure out whatever we need to figure out.
Right. Baltimore is it. That is the relationship. That is what we all share and have in common. Thank you. Kerry, final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm thinking 2 things. One, Gary, I really appreciate that, like this idea that relationships go up and down, right? Because if you have a relationship that never has any tension or friction or conflict, you're not really in relationship because someone is not being honest. That's just right. We're humans. That's just humanity. And so I think that opportunity to really like pause and reflect and be like, if it's in a down moment, like how do we work through and stay in relationship? And actually seeing that as like an indication of right relationship instead of a problem to be solved. But then I'll just offer, I have a note up on my wall next to some family photos that make me happy that says, who is it for and what is it for? And those are my 2 guiding questions. And I always say, when I'm in conversation with other funders, I say, if the answer to both of those is the funder and the funder, that's when we need to pause and slow down and like reconsider what it is we're doing and why we're doing it, because that we're not serving Baltimore, we're not serving our nonprofit partners, we're not serving their clients, we're not serving the community, we're serving ourselves. And that it doesn't get us anywhere. And sometimes I don't have the power, the influence, the control, whatever I need to in order to shift that. But just being super clear with myself and with whoever I'm working on something with about what's underlying the why, like why are we doing this thing, whatever the thing may be, it can be really sort of regrounding. And so I will just offer that into the ether in case it's valuable to anybody else.
Thank you. And Sara, bring us home.
Yes. I was just reflecting on kind of Adar's last what she was saying about like thought partners with funders and how, it when you're in a transformational kind of relationship or in that space, I think influence is another that keeps coming up for me. And when you're in relationship with partners, with other funders, and you're to a degree, I can think of like the perfect example, but around like organizing and influencing, and you can't do that without relationships and trust. So that's what I'm sitting with.
Thank you. Dana.
Oh my goodness, y'all. I think we're going to have you back to continue the discussion, but for now, we're going to embrace non-closure. But I really thank you all for this conversation because like I said, I feel like it has transformed a little bit the way I think about this. I will say one thing to your points that I think all of you made about thought partnership. It's true. Once we started the discussion, I was kind of laughing to myself because sometimes I forget that you all give us money because the relationship starts to be more about thought partnership. We've had discussions with all of you, especially this year when, we've had some fiscal sponsor things, as many people listening probably know. We needed thought partnership and we got it from you all, and it was incredibly helpful. But yeah, it just really changes the relationship away from the transactional. So love that. Love you all. Thank you for coming. We're going to just share with our folks here a little bit, a couple things as we're closing out. Yeah, we do this stuff. We do client work. We work on industry specific projects. Lots of cool stuff. If you go to our website, you can learn more. Oh, yeah. If you go to our website, you can also email us at info@bemoreantiracist.org if you have specific questions about this event. We're happy to talk further. And last but not least, we are on the 13th of this month, which is a week and a half away, going to be doing our monthly 13th event. It's going to be a pretty deep conversation. We're going to talk about racial profiling, freedom papers, etc., in wake of the Supreme Court's recent decision. So it's going to be a pretty heavy but useful conversation. We have some exciting guests joining us, and we hope you will too. And with that, I think we'll close out. It's been such a pleasure to have our panelists here and have this audience here who's been really wonderful. So thanks to everybody.